Good afternoon, good evening. Like we say on this show, it all depends the time zone from where you are watching us from. Welcome to The Leader, courtesy of the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya on Hope Media. My name is Edmund Mudibo. And today, this show is a show with a difference because it's coming at a time when EAK, that is Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, is soon marking its 50th anniversary. That wonderful, memorable 50 years of existence. And with me in studio, I'm very glad to have Pastor Moses Gidenji.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Now, before I ask who you are, we're going to look at the evangelical journey in Kenya. Because is EAK just a society, a club that is social? No. There's a story behind it and a reason for its existence. But first things first, Pastor Moses.
Yes.
Wewe ni nani?
Thank you for having me, Mr. Nbuna. I'm so grateful to be here. First of all, my name is Moses Gidinji, as you have said. I'm married to one beautiful wife who makes my liver to quiver. And her name is Timna Gidinji.
Yes.
Together we have 4 kids, 3 girls and 1 boy. And I serve at KAG, Kenya Assemblies of God, under Archbishop Philip Kitoto. And my local church is ICC Nairobi, under Bishop Gibson Anduvate. And serving as the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya Youth Chairperson. And it's a humbling space to be in, and a lot of work. Yes.
Like they say, the harvest is plenty.
The laborers are few.
The laborers are few.
Yes.
I'm very glad, very excited. But the part that makes me interested, you know, you raised the bar when you said your wife makes what?
My liver to quiver.
Your liver to quiver.
She's the only one.
Hey. See? Raise your bar. But iko sawa.
Iko sawa.
The other part is that you've got 3 daughters, eh?
Yes.
Their ages?
14 years, 9 years, and 6.
Now that makes me, as a father of 2 boys,
Oh, good.
to quiver. I don't know what is quivering. But anyway, if you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
All right. Now, as we get to the evangelical journey in Kenya, you know, today, as a country, we are going to trace the evangelical journey in Kenya in terms of its roots, its impact, and where we are headed as a movement. It didn't just happen.
Yes.
And let's see. So, when one says evangelical, what does it really mean in Kenyan context? Utakwambia evangelical, inamaanisha nini?
Leadership has taught me that everything rises and falls with leadership. And one big thing that has been of great essence is perspective. If what seems to me as 6 on your side appears as 9. And so the term evangelical is concurrent. It can be used in the different phrases. I remember when I was growing up in primary school, we used to have a program called PPI. In PPI, we would be told, the teacher would come and say, Protestants, go on this side, and the other side to go on the other side. But as I grew up, then I started hearing that term evangelical. And I'd love to say that it is a term used for not to bring any harm, but a term to clarify the fact that when you talk about being evangelistic, you're talking of an approach to how you do things, approach to how why you do what you do, how you think, why you think. And that brings and magnifies the fact that you being an evangelical, you're talking about spreading the good news. You're talking about independence in charisma. You're talking about the freedom of worship. You're talking about not bound by structure, and that brings in the aspect of even why churches are the way they are right now, the flow of services, how they do things. But the fact remains rather that it is an approach perspective. So it has got nothing to do with the evangelicals. When you say evangelical, you're talking of more holier beings than any other person. It is just a term used to signify the concept of approach and why we do things, doctrinal values, doctrinal approaches. And mere fact why people, the way of worship and the culture of worship. So that's really the fact when you talk about evangelicals.
So then, how did the evangelical movement begin to take root in Kenya? We're in Kenya, and Kenya is our business.
Kenya is our business. The Evangelical Alliance of Kenya was founded in 1975. Now, I was born 10 years after it was founded. And the concept of our pastors and bishop coming together was the main reason to focus and bring this to a unified purpose of transformation. When the church comes together, their main cause is not of personal interest, but of community value. And so when it was first founded, it was actually Evangelical Fellowship of Kenya. So it started as a fellowship. And then later, of course, as we have proceeded, it has changed to Evangelical Alliance. Where in 1975, there were no, we didn't have more churches than we have today. There were well-known bishops who could, probably meet somewhere and have tea and have kahawa and talk. The unity came together for a unified purpose of discipleship. Because as church grew, people increased. You remember, you have to note that church and state go hand in hand. And the moment the state again would develop values, would develop structure, would begin to grow and expand, the church also the same way expanded. And doing that, they came together knowing very well that in as regard as they are preaching and they are leaders, they needed to have a concept. They needed to be together. They needed to be unified. People needed to see them focused on one agenda, which was preaching the gospel, bringing the good news to the people, and that began as a fellowship. And so at that time, of course, they came up with a leader at that time, and they were able to bring together what they had, and just started a journey like that. And the sole purpose and intent is not what really happens today with the EAK. Because as EFK grew, more mandate was added to them. They realized that they hold a lot on their plate, more than even the purpose they started it. So the agenda has been changing over time, but the principle remained the same. The unity and the transformation purpose of the church. So that one has to go to the foundational purposes of why EFK was started. And now Evangelical Alliance of Kenya.
So now, were there unique cultural or historical factors that shaped its early growth here? Because even as it was conceptualized and the rationale and its vision was being set up, were there cultural or historical factors that shaped its early growth here?
Remember that when in 1975, and this is just to take us back and understand the historical perspective, the tribal space which we are currently in was not as problematic as we have today. And at that time, their sole purpose of coming together, they came from different tribes. And by the time they came to realize that actually they're from different tribes, that was not even an underlying issue. And so culture came together when these bishops and pastors came together, because they realized they have one country, one people, one nation. And so the culturally different, their culture differences was not really a deciding factor on why EFK was even started. And so as they grew in numbers, and members would join in for fellowship and say, yes, indeed, we are on a good course. Of course, there were different cultures, and they were able to mitigate through the process and the problems that came along. But even what helps me, Mr. Edmund, is the fact that they were able to put these cultures together. That despite these differences, they were able to, cover that and understand that perspective in regards to the fundamental reason why they had come together. And so cultures were there, yes. There were differences in, the leaders and the chairman have come from different tribes or, until to date. But had that, even in that family concept of evangelical, it has never been a mere factor of where do you come from and where are you going. And it is important for us to understand that that is an important virtue that has made the church today to stick together. So those cultural issues were there, but they were minor compared to the major reason why they had come together.
You know, it's interesting when one is around, I mean, when one is born, history
Yes.
starts with you in terms of your coming into being,
Yes.
as it were. And so is the case of EAK, formerly EFK. So there's a beautiful story to be told here. And you've alluded to the reason how and why it came into being. And, if you have to just reflect, look at the rearview mirror and respond to what could have been some of these earliest goals and priorities of EAK? Because I'm sure there could have been meeting, yes, tea could have been part of the reason, but it was not it.
Yes. You realize that numbers mean a lot. When you come together and talk with one voice, you actually make a statement. And during that time, 1975, there were some issues that had started to come in. Because now when you have church and state, as the state is progressing in their political maneuvers and spaces, you realize that it even affected the church. And so because there were different denominations, and one denomination could speak, and probably the weight it had wasn't as much. And so in as much as they had kahawa when they were doing their fellowship, they realized that they need to be in one voice. They need to be together. They need to speak on behalf of the church. Because the congregants, people who are following them, and they look at them as leaders, they would, probably on a Sunday, they would look at them and say, there is this question you're about to ask me, but you're not asking me. And say, why are you quiet when there are injustices in the country? And so that push, just from within, made them also to come together to understand that if we have to stand for justice, if we have to stand for integrity, we have to be together. And in as much as they were in a fellowship, agendas would form over time, because then they would realize if government does something at that very time that which needed the allotment of the church, then who was to speak on behalf of the church? And so this formation again would tweak an agenda and say, we need to say something about an injustice that we've seen, or something that would actually cause this country to take a different trajectory. If we do not speak as a church, then who will? And so they would sit down, of course, and address, make press conference statements, and they would call out the issues, the injustices of what is going on in the country. They would advise, they would encourage, they would love, but they became this one voice that would speak to state when it came to matters church. And so every time there was anything going on with in the country that needed the concept, that needed people to understand that the church is not quiet, then the Evangelical Fellowship of Kenya would actually rise up above the waters and come and make a press statement and say, we love this, or rather we don't love this. And I would give one example and say, you remember the time the former President Moi brought in the Mlolongo concept. It was a church that stood out and said, this one can't work. You see? And so as much as everybody was quiet and afraid, if I speak up alone, then I would, things might happen to me. The church took up the concept and said, this is not the way. And later again, Mlolongo was destabilized. And so it became affirmative to them that in as much as they were together, then they had one agenda. In as much as they were doing discipleship to build the church, then they became this voice of the church to speak on behalf of the church to the states and on behalf of the nation.
So then, how has EAK positioned itself as in national conversations? You've alluded to some of it, because you've got matters, faith, governance, or even social matters.
Today you realize that from 1975 you can't compare with the churches, how God has expanded the church now. And Evangelical Alliance of Kenya now celebrates a membership of even more than 600 denominations, and which translates to almost 40,000 to churches. And you realize as we expand, then we become that voice. But also, we become the hands and the feet of Christ. And so the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya is an umbrella body that embodies a lot of denominations. And so a denomination is a member. And so what happens in denomination also happens at the level, affects Evangelical Alliance of Kenya. And so when you have all these social things going on in this denomination, whichever it is, currently we celebrate CITAM for having a TV, and this is helping the Church of God grow. And we are enshrined in a way that we have to have impact in community. We need to have impact in the things that we do. So EAK has been involved entirely with resources, time, and people and leaders to make sure that the growth of the nation in social matters, in the nation matters, in matters that develop a nation to become what it is, that EAK has been a factor all through. So we are grateful where we are. And the impact, honestly, is something we are celebrating God for.
And I think, correctly, I believe there's also, besides the denominations, you've got what I'd call the para-church organizations.
Para-churches organization, yes, indeed.
And if you look in terms of numbers, somebody said numbers don't lie.
Yes.
Numbers don't die.
Yes.
And numbers tell a story.
Yes. Here you go.
So you find that when you look at the numbers then, in terms of those that are affected or are part of EAK, when you bring it down even to the congregants, the membership,
yes,
the workers, just the whole ecosystem, it runs in excess of at least at a minimum 15 million plus.
Million plus. And you're talking about numbers that over time God has expanded us. And just talking about the parachurch that you've just mentioned, there is one specific organization I really respect, and led by one Bishop Moses Odhiambo. And A Cause of Mercy is actually a charitable organization and takes care of children, and also Hope Alive International, which takes care of widows. And recently they hosted the First Lady in Nyamira, and you are talking about almost 10,000 widows. And you can imagine that is just a fraction of what Evangelical can be involved in. And the impact on the ground can be felt. When we start having the milestones and the conversations, I think probably we'll leave here tomorrow. Yes. But just to name,
yes. Yeah.
And allude to what you have said, God has been faithful. God has been faithful.
In fact, you could, now that you're on that trajectory, even pick up a couple of those milestones that you can say yes. When you look at the story of EAK in the last 50 years to date, some of these milestones that come...
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Tell us a couple.
One of the milestones I'd love to say about it is, for me, growing up as a young man, is to see chairman after chairman after chairman bring new concepts, bring new passion, bring the fire on board the Evangelical Alliance. So right now we have the Archbishop Philip Kitoto, who is the General Superintendent of Kenya Assemblies of God, leading the fraternity. And the way I know him as my father, he is a next generation man. He impacts values, and leadership in him is tremendous. And so these opportunities that again he has brought, and the concept of relevance to the Evangelical Alliance, because we are living in times and days where information is so much, to a level where the Gen Z have dubbed YouTube University. That if really you woke up today, what the information you had yesterday is now gone. Now we are talking about new information. And so the leadership now even with the General Secretary, Reverend Kefa, they have been able to bring in the holistic formation, the spiritual formation of the church, the unity of the church, the legacy, the transformative stories now are able to be put on social media, and people are able to follow through and saying, what is EAK doing? EAK has been able to have those milestones. One is changing leader after leader without any issues. We've seen organizations where people want to stay there forever. So you're talking about transitional leadership. That has been very, 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 very good. You're talking about the impact on the ground. And EAK being an umbrella body, we also measure, as an organization, we also measure milestones with our denomination members. And so where I'm serving as a KAG, we've been able to be involved in providing water to communities that don't have water. Full Gospel has done the same. You're talking about Baptist churches, starting churches to the bordermost parts of the country. So you bring these together, and you realize that the church has been involved, and the evangelical also has been involved, and that is one of the ways we use to measure how is the impact of EAK on matters state. EAK has been involved in the Shakahola controversies. You remember the presidential task force formed, and we had our bishops be part of it to talk about religious regulations. We are there out calling out injustices. We are there out condemning murder when it comes to protest of the young people. We've been out there calling and saying this is not correct, this is not good, this is good, this is what we affirm. And so those milestones, and one of the biggest being the call to right to life in the Kenya Constitution in 2010, that we were involved to say, where does life begin? You see? So we cannot say that the evangelical hasn't been involved. We have been involved. And those are some of the milestones that we have done. And celebrating just, what has gone. Recently, I remember there was a bill tabled by Senator Mongatana on, issues to do with regulating the religious organization under the legislative framework. And we came out and said, we've just come out from a presidential task force, and we have put in a framework of regularization of churches and denominations. Let's put this aside and first of all work on this. We have called out on the issues on matters budgets in the country, the national budgets, the fiscal year. We are out there, Mr. Edmund, and we are calling it and saying we celebrate these milestones of how far the Lord has brought us. So today we celebrate 50 years.
Yes.
And what a time to be alive.
In fact, there's a milestone in terms of who takes care of the shepherds. All credits really, and just appreciation of the shepherd, because the shepherd has the flock. But at times we take our pastors for granted in terms of just assuming you are superheroes.
True.
And with all humility and appreciation, the question then begs, who provides, who takes care of them? And this, without any fear of contradiction, I'm aware of, and I would encourage those out there who are shepherds, who are pastors, across the board, matters health. Because a congregant will come to the pastor and say, I'm ailing, pray for me, or I need this, benevolence, etc., and so on. But the pastors too, also, while on earth, have to take care of their health. And we know that the rubber meets the road when hospitalization kicks in. There's an initiative, a recent milestone between EAK and Purchase Insurance to provide affordable, competitive, reliable cover health for pastors. So pastors out there, ask for the Purchase EAK medical cover for clergy. It is one that will make a difference, so that you can also provide and take care of us as congregants.
There you go.
Okay. So now, society evolves in terms of the profile Kenya got independence way back. This is, your parents were dating. If you came into this
Yes, study 85
you
years.
must have been in school.
Oh yes, definitely.
But the point I'm making here is that society profile is not static. The only constant in life, they say, is change. But there's also the other constant before this constant, the word of God.
Yes.
But then I'm bringing this up in terms of just a profile. When EAK came in, this is 13 years after independence, as it were, and now as you're marking a 50th anniversary, the profile of the Kenyan population, and I'm looking at the society, and the perception, we say in communication, perception is reality. So society also has been changing. Kenya, Africa, youthful, greatest asset. But the perception of society towards evangelicals, has it shifted today compared to earlier decades? I.e., if you look at the Kenyan population profile, EAK coming into being as EFK, 75, and then as you're marking 50 years, society, majority, 80%, some argue, is under 35 years, your age, mkirudi chini. What has been the shift in perception of evangelicals?
That's a very good question. I break it in 3 ways. One is church and state. The second one is church and corporate. And then you have the third level, church and community. So Evangelical Alliance of Kenya has been involved in so much of that. 75, you realize they came together for fellowship, but then they realize they are more than a fellowship, they are a voice. Over time, because the congregants who go to churches have skills, and so there has been a partnership on how does the church support its members, even in business fraternity, in the marketplace. How does the church go to the marketplace to preach this gospel? And the church has been so much involved in equipping members to be effective in discipleship, even in their spaces of work. The third one is church and community. I'd say we have been involved in the community perspective to say that the intentionality of community development has been key to all those shifts. Now, if you realize and look at the numbers, Mr. Edmund, I think the world hit 1 billion people between 1980 and 1990 there. And the prospect of people just become, multiplying. If I come to our own nation where we are in 2008, Kenya hit 40 million people. And by then I know President Kibaki knew that we have to bring a shift. And so he brought together a team to come up with a concept of Vision 2030, which underlined on 3 pillars: the economic one, the political one, and the social one. And you realize that state is changing and there are differences in growth. The church was also doing the same. And this is the reason, because as again numbers grow, you realize people are looking to belong. So denominations are coming up, and God is planting churches, and we have pastor clergy and who are looking for, where can I go to? And so the state is rising in terms of structure and development infrastructure, but also the church was also. And so these shifts, as you realize, is the 3 ones. They have been able to affect the growth of the church, or rather how the church view things today. The biggest of them all is relevance. Because without relevance, you realize the church cannot reach a generation. And when you have fathers who have raised us, because I think during my time in 1990s, I used to watch Bishop Mark on TV, and today working with him and being with him, it's a great privilege. And then you realize the person you're serving under is someone who has really a heart and a passion for growth, for people who he's serving. And such opportunities to go out and speak and be the voice, you realize that they have given young people a space. And so those are some of the shifts, Mr. Edmund, I can tell you, that when we talk about the Evangelical Alliance, we're talking about a shift on mind shift, approach, the way we do our outreach. You remember we used to have crusades. You know, nowadays a car would go around preaching the gospel. Nowadays probably that's not the case, because the generation we are reaching is different. Everybody has a computer now. And when you share something on TikTok, you realize it reaches millions and billions of people just on TikTok. Whereas you could have spent a lot of money going around with a van, and you have to fuel, and you have to make sure you're watching the kilometers. So some of the shifts are those ones. Health factors. The church, the EAK and the members have been able to bring in schools. They've been able to bring in health facilities. They've been able to build hospitals. They've been able to build, community development spaces. And that has been a shift. And those have been some of the things that we celebrate in our 50 years. So it's been a journey where you begin to talk about the aspects of how the shift has happened. You can actually tell the evangelical has grown, the evangelistic team has grown. The general secretary, who is the former Mr. Makanda, now chairing the IEBC team to bring in commissioners. And those are some of the things we celebrate, because one thing has been fundamental to us: integrity, unity, and transformation. Yeah.
Now, as we continue looking at the impact on society, that is the evangelical impact on society, what would you say are the biggest contributions of the evangelical movement in shaping the Kenyan society? Because even Kenya as a society doesn't exist as an island unto itself. We're part of a bigger community of the world where we're a nation state. So what would you say are the biggest contributions of the evangelical movement in shaping the Kenyan society?
The first one, I'd take us back to the 2010 Constitution, as I've said. And you remember the No movement, the No side that said this Constitution has something, this draft has something we need to change before we pass it into law. And I remember the church was on the forefront of calling for the right of worship, the right of the right to life. And that has been good. But also Article 32 that talks about the right for religion. And I think it's important for people to understand that the mere fact the church was the voice, that regardless of 2-3 people who had an agenda, that one did not come to pass. And so 2010 Constitution has been fundamental on the growth of our nation. Today we celebrate a country where we have liberty. We celebrate a country where we have freedom. We celebrate a country where there's freedom of religion. You can join any religion you feel like. You can start any, as long as it is under the law that again doesn't go beyond what the law desires you to do. The second one I would bring on to board, and I'm talking about these ones because they are recent, is the Shakahola space. You remember we had mass graves. You remember we had killings of, people had joined a cult. And the church being involved in making sure that we are part and parcel of change. And I remember bishops calling out and saying, in as much as there is freedom, then again also we must protect life. And justice must be served. And the Presidential Task Force, which was formed by President William Ruto, involved bishops from EAK and other umbrella religious organizations to come together and find a way to regularize and bring church to order, and say, how do we regulate churches and make sure that they are preaching the true gospel and not any other gospel. And so that one has been, I know it's in the process of enforcement, being enforced rather. The third thing I'd say is the mere fact that we have stood with our true doctrine. That has been fundamental. When you talk about true doctrine, you talk about calling out people, organizations, and people who seem to take advantage and exploit members of the public in the name of church. But then you realize that if you don't belong to an umbrella body organization, no man is an island. And we're able to say, even as pastors, and you've mentioned about the health, the clergy joining the pastors insurance thing, because the more numbers you have, then the economy of scale is better. So we've been able to stand with the issues matters doctrine and make sure that we are aligned to the fact that the churches that are under Evangelical Alliance of Kenya are preaching the true doctrine of Christ. And if you hear and sit down with these bishops talk, you listen and hear that they call and speak in one voice. The last one I'd say is the fact that we have called out the misspending of government when it comes to the national budget. And I remember even the team, I think, kind of met the president on to discuss matters church and state. And we were able to share where the people are at. And this is the pain we are feeling. And you remember there was, the president came out and said that he's going to, his administration will tone down on implementation of other things because they were very expensive. And this was, of course, at the birth of the Finance Bill 2024. So we have been instrumental in nation building. EAK is just not an organization where people meet and discuss and have kahawa. But we talk national matters. We talk social services. We talk health facilities. We are calling out, the share space where the systems are not really working in some areas. How can the government come out and, help through the Ministry of Health, help this, cover of share to work and serve the people of Kenya. So we are really, really intentional on making sure that we are part of nation building.
There's something you've mentioned that comes to mind then, in terms of also where evangelicals have left a mark, and there's no way we can talk about evangelicals leaving a mark without EAK being part and parcel, being the voice that then has force, so to speak. Education. Because a nation that has its education upside down is a nation that is lost.
Imagine. They say if you want to plant, if you want to feed a nation, then you have a 10-year plan. But if you have 100 years plan plus, then you educate a nation. And I couldn't overemphasize the need of education in a nation. I couldn't overemphasize the fact that whatever we are seeing right now in our nation is, with the Gen Z concept, it's a nation that is educated, doesn't have employment, You're looking at young people who have degrees and master's degrees, and what they can only do now is not to their profession, but then they have to survive to put food on the table. So the member churches of EAK have been involved in education. How? Starting churches, schools, and being so sure with the matters education, starting schools, and making sure that they have what they need, the resources, the curriculums. They are brought in the international concepts. They are brought in partnering with international organizations to make sure that education is free for all, to a level where some of them have children's home and they run children's home and they educate these children all through. And I'll take you back to Echoes of Mercy because I am involved in that space, and this is not a story. Children who are orphans educated for free. You can imagine what that means to a nation. And this is just one organization, and I commend Bishop Bishop Moses Odhiambo for what he's doing. Hope Alive, bringing widows together to educate them and have workshops. And so education in matters EAK and many denominations that are involved. Almost every denomination now has a school and has schools for that matter. It is a fundamental thing that we are saying. If we are thinking about the next 50 years, of Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, education must be part of it. The social services must be guarded. Health, education, those are major factor, and food, clothing and shelter. You cannot play around with those words, even in matters to do with squeezed budgets. Those ones are penal codes that you cannot touch for the development of a nation. So we are involved in that, and I think commending every organization that is doing that, and more schools are being started in these denominations. The more land we buy out there, you hear a church has bought land. Mostly it is now to begin to have, to bring in community on board. You have churches now, member churches now, who are part of planting a church, but also planting a school. So church starts on Monday. They meet on Sunday for garage and service, and then church on Monday. Then you have teachers who fellowship in the same church, and they are able to educate, children. And I think the next 50 years, as we talk about celebrating the past 50 years, we are on a good course, Mr. Edmund.
There's the content also, just ensuring that we don't have ungodly content sneaked in the curriculum, where, if my little memory serves me right and belief, God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve.
Not Adam and Steve. Yes.
And then you now have muddying the waters in matters gender and allowing what is ungodly being sneaked in the in where you have liberty, freedom to decide who you are, who you feel like, even if it's not what God created you to be. So at least being able to filter what is right in content of the curriculum, and also capacity building the shepherds, the pastors, for discipleship as a mandate of EAK.
It has been something we have really, and I commend this to our chairman, Bishop Philip Kitoto, together with Reverend Kefa. Recently we had a meeting, and we spoke about our children and the future of our children. And we met officials from government, and we spoke and said, how far are we with this? Because we are really intentioned to know how far we've gone. And one of the things we spoke about, and I remember, was the CSE concept of bringing comprehensive sexual education in early years in our schools. And we were able to categorically state that we are people who stand for truth. Some of us, I studied reproduction when I was in class 6 or 7. And I'm okay, I'm fine. Why should it be introduced at class 3 and 4? And in as much as some people have an agenda, EAK stands for the truth. We stand for the mere fact that we are thinking about the future of our nation. We are thinking about the future of our children. We are thinking about the development of our nation. And you have spoken about building capacity. You can't build capacity by again starting to destroy the foundation of our nation. What you're actually doing is, in the next 10 years, you'll have chaos of people believing in what they believe. And we will not be able to control matters sexuality. And so we are standing for the truth. We are calling out all these things in protection of our children, in protection of what needs to be done, in protection of community development, not only taking water to those who don't have water, but also sieving content and saying, how beneficial is it for the people you're telling it to? Today, if we begin to go where people don't have water and we are telling them about buying a new phone, you realize you have lost relevance. Because the content you're giving them is not helpful to them. What they need at that point is something to drink. And we are so much intentional about how we do it. We are so much intentional of what comes out, and we're able to sieve. Also, just what is tabled at Parliament, we're able to see how does that protect nation building. Because then we know, there are agendas. Not everybody is for the nation, and they hold leadership positions. So we must be the voice that God has called us to be for capacity building of our nation and also the development of our nation.
So now in the next 2-3 minutes, let's wanasema tuseme itutoke.
Tuseme kutoke.
And being truthful.
Yes.
Challenges on the evangelical journey. Because every movement has its struggles. So what challenges have evangelicals faced in Kenya?
I'll tell you one of them is the mere fact that EAK has to keep having meetings with people to speak to speak over one topic for a long time, which again, you realize that the fact that you meet with people for the first time, you understand that they are going to keep the end of the bargain. And so the first problem that we face, and I'm looking for words to put it in concept, the first problem we face is when we talk about the development of our nation, and when we meet other parties, you realize that sometimes the timelines you give for that, whatever you decided to be done, you realize that timeline passes, and then you have to spend more resources to make sure that you're going back to revisit the same concepts. And what was supposed to take a year takes 3 years, takes 4 years, because there are so many moving blocks when it comes to implementing what you have discussed. The secondly, I'd say doctrine. Doctrine has also been a very, very major problem, where you have churches and you realize that not all of them are preaching the true gospel. And we must protect the congregation God has given us, the sheep, from being exploited. So those are the challenges that creep up most of the time, that the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya has to stand strong in. And then, of course, the last one, the political aspect, which again, the state, you realize we are all under people under authority, and leading upwards is also sometimes a very difficult job. When you meet your leaders and you iron out issues and say, this is our challenge with our people. You feel this will take the nation this way. You feel this, and you agree that it will be implemented. And then again, things don't work, or you realize there are 2-3 political aspects that will benefit 2-3 people, and you realize the whole EAK and the whole nation has to be in dilemmas. And so when I talk about also the political space, I'm also talking about tabling of bills in Parliament. You realize we have to be so cautious of the bills we pass for people. We have to be more and more integral and understand what concepts we have. So there are many challenges, but I would say those 3 could be one of the major ones: doctrine, the political aspects, and the bills and the laws of the nation. But more so, I'd say discipling is also a major one, because you have to reach communities that have not been reached, and you spend a lot of resources doing that. But you can't compare resources with
and I see that challenge, as it were, as opportunity.
Yes,
in terms of the unreached.
Yes.
And here, Matthew 28, in terms of the Great Commission being applied.
Yes.
Now, as we wind up in the next 2 or 3 minutes, as it were, very quickly, what do you see as the future of the evangelical movement in Kenya? One line, 30 seconds. What do you see as the future?
I would tell you that is the fundamental reason even why we are celebrating. Coming together 50 years. We are talking about, we are celebrating, it's a Jubilee celebration of vision and impact.
Yes.
But we're also celebrating a legacy of a transformation, unity, and preaching the gospel. But more so, we are talking about the next 50, where the youth, the young people are involved, and honoring our fathers who have been there before. And if I start naming names here, we won't finish. But celebrating every church father who has been involved in the conversation of the church, making sure that the church is moving on swiftly. So we are behind all this, and we are thinking about the next 50 years. Again, as I've said, church and state, we will be involved in matters governance and leadership. Church and corporate will be involved in the marketplace. We will have this done. And church and community, we will be part of the community. In fact, today I'm having a street worship gathering along Aga Khan Walk.
Yes.
From 4 p.m. to around 5. And so we must also think about church outside the walls. And so we are celebrating what God has done, and we are so grateful.
Now, the conference that is coming up,
Yes.
EAK at 50, the Jubilee Conference, 16th to 18th of this month, next week, in fact, 16th to 18th at Sitam Karen. And everybody who's out there needs to be part and parcel of this. We've got pastors coming from all over the country. There are those who are coming from as far as Mandera, Isiolo, Busia, Lodwar, Namanga, Mombasa,
Yes.
you name it, across all over the country. But again, you as out there, what can be the appeal to support? Because they can want to participate, to be present, to come, be capacity build, and be part of this story, and are unable. Registration is at a minimum, yes. But how can we support, even if it means you accommodating the pastor out there and saying, yes, come Nairobi, we'll go these 3 days. And if the challenge, as it were, which gives opportunity for close interaction, of accommodation, support that pastor, accommodates that pastor, so that they can also attend and be part of this conference that's taking place. Sitam Karen, 16th to 18th next week.
From 8 a.m.
From 8 a.m. to
5.
To 5 in the evening. And you know, during this conference, we'll be looking at how we are honoring the past and envisioning the future. The milestone of 50 is not an end, it's just a pause to reflect, appreciate, and look forward. We've got the discipleship mandate. We spoke about it. Challenge but opportunity. We must disciple. There's many, many, many more people out there who are yet to be discipled, to be engaged, so that they too can get into the knowledge and relationship with our Savior Christ. There's the great enabler. Missions. As the Father has sent me, so send I you. Opportunity to be here. So when we are looking at how you can support, I can be part of this, the very basic contact here. Mobile number 0706 444 714. 0706 444 714. That gets to EAK. Call that number 24/7 and say, how can I be part of this? How can I support? How can I come? How can I make a difference as we envision the future? Pastor Moses.
Yes, sir.
Daughters 3.
Yes. One son.
One son?
Yes.
It's okay. He can be a son-in-law.
We can talk.
We can talk, eh?
Over kahawa.
Over kahawa.
Yes.
Over kahawa.
Yes.
EAK at 50, Jubilee. Wonderful time. It's been an honor to engage with you.
It's been an honor, sir.
And look forward to the next 50. So, this has been the leader, courtesy of the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya. We don't take your time, the privilege of your time, for granted. Let's do this next time. My name is Edmund Mudibo. Stay well, stay safe. Let's meet at the Jubilee Conference of EAK, 16th to 18th, Sitam Karen, Nairobi. Kwaheri.